I'm going to be talking about project discovery for Drupal. I'm really excited to be here, and I hope that you are too. So we got a lot to go through. We got a lot of questions. The slide deck is up on the MidCamp site for the session if you want to follow along, or also if you just want to, for later, have these questions for you. So let's just get started. This is me, Larry Walangitan. I work for Chromatic. We're a distributed team with people all around the world. This is my Twitter handle. And just to gauge everyone that's here, I myself am a web developer. I'm not a project manager, but I'm really passionate about project discovery. It's probably my favorite part of the process. So just to get a gauge of everyone, like who here are developers? Awesome. And project managers? Fantastic. Designers, stakeholders, all of the above? Site builders, fantastic. Great. So project discovery has been something that early in my career I really struggled with when I was a freelancer. And I feel like it's a common story that a lot of people may have had, where you enter into a project super optimistic about what's going to happen, and things like they just don't go the way that you would have hoped that they would have been. And I would say that when we talk about project management and project discovery, we need to figure out why project discovery matters. And I think that there are 5 reasons why project discovery matters. So we're just going to go through them real quick before we dive deeper into why projects run away from us, and then also addressing the questions that we ask when we're doing project discovery at Chromatic. So the first reason why project discovery matters is because software development, it's a difficult thing. The things that we do, we take these abstract thoughts and we translate them into lines of code and into features. And that's something that we should give ourselves credit for. It's not easy to quantify all the time. The amount of time it takes to write a few lines of code might not seem proportional, but it's so important just to keep in mind that this is not simple. Now, the second reason I say that software development and project discovery is important is because software development is relationship development. So we're building relationships with our clients. We're building this trust. They trust us as experts to deliver on their projects, but we're also helping them build trust with their users as well. So we're building relationships with clients, with users, and finally with data. We're building these relationships with data, with content types, with views, with panels. All of these things tie together. And so for the third thing of why project discovery matters, is because that the people matter when we're building the software. This is the Chromatic team at our yearly retreat. The partners in the front flexing, having a great time. It's just a great reminder that people are our most important resource when we're building software. And getting everyone on the same page to work together to build what we're building for our clients or for ourselves, it's a simple thing, but it's not always easy. It's something that it's really wonderful when everyone is working together, when project leads, when developers, when stakeholders, when clients, when we're all on the same page. But getting to there, as we all probably know, isn't as easy as it sounds. It's a simple concept, but it's something that we need to continue to strive for. And I feel like the best way to do that is just to remember that these are people that we're interacting with. When you're sending emails to clients, or you're making pull requests, or doing code reviews, we're interacting with people. And that's why this industry is so dynamic, is because we're interfacing between people and software. The fourth reason why project discovery matters is because clients are hopefully paying for you. They're paying for your time, they're paying for your intelligence, they're paying for your expertise. And it's important that we do our own due diligence as developers, as project managers, as business owners, to build this trust with them. And I feel like the initial stages of a project with project discovery is super important to help build that trust so that they know that they're in good hands and that they can trust you. You've covered your bases so that they can trust you to build what you need to do. And finally, the fifth thing, and I would say is even more important than just why why people matter is because we're an open source community. This is a photo from DrupalCon LA, which is a great DrupalCon. Really excited about DrupalCon New Orleans. But as an open source community, it's important that we do our best to deliver on what we promise our clients. A rising tide raises all ships. And so a successful Drupal launch from any agency or freelancer or company, it helps us all because it helps to build what Drupal is. I would want you to learn from the mistakes that I've made, and I want to hear about your successes because it's so exciting to hear what the community is doing, what they're building, what we're doing together to help build a stronger community and launch even more awesome and exciting products. And I think that all of this works together to help make Drupal more viable in the market. It's the community that really helps us to sell Drupal. And I think that it's so important just to remember that we're all in this together in a little way. So here's a big question. Why does software development lend itself to runaway projects? This is a question that's been struggled with for a long time by a lot of thinkers. Like, why does it seem that, just a simple mathematical thing of put in the time to build this product, why doesn't it always seem to go astray in some way? There's always these little things. And could it be that the methodology that we're using is incorrect? Maybe Agile isn't the best. Maybe we should go to Lean. Maybe Waterfall was actually the best. I don't know. I don't have those answers. But is that potentially it? Or maybe we're just using the wrong tools. Maybe Drupal isn't the right tool for whatever product or project that you're on, which is a lot of the times the case. It's good to be aware of what tool fits this project. But maybe it's a lack of discipline between your client for providing requirements, or your own developers of not meeting the requirements, or perhaps it's just the wrong personnel, the wrong people on the project. I would say that the answer to all of those is yes, it's all of the above. It could be all of those, but there's a deeper question that we're trying to answer here. And for the real reason why projects run away, there's two particular reasons that seem to be consistent across all software projects, not just in Drupal, but just within software in general. And those are poor estimation and unstable requirements. Poor estimation is something that's so hard to talk about because it's so hard to get right. Estimating how much a project will cost, how much time it's going to take to deliver on your project to your clients, and also estimating how well your clients will respond to your own requests. I'm sure that a lot of us have been in situations where we're humming along on a project, things are going great, then we need content or migrations or access to servers or other things from our clients. And it's hard to estimate those things. Maybe your project for them isn't the top of their priority, but it is the top of your own priority. So it's hard to navigate that, and a lot of it is just the human error. It's like this human element that we're dealing with. So we're dealing with people, and it's important to remember that. So I'm just going to go and unpack these two things: poor estimation and then unstable requirements. Now, with proper project discovery, we're trying to get rid of the second part, unstable requirements. If we can mitigate that, we can have a better system to just have more stable projects and launches and remaining on schedule. So poor estimation is an optimistic estimation. When we try to dissect that, it's really clear that they're the exact same thing. And I know that I'm 100% guilty of this. When you talk to your clients and they ask you, how long is this going to take? How much is it going to cost? You want to be optimistic. You want to have them know that you care about this. You want to deliver it to the best of your ability, under budget, on time. But a lot of the times that gets us into a really sticky situation when things just don't work out. So I would say that when you're doing this, this is probably one of the most appropriate times to be pessimistic about everything, about the requirements, and not pessimistic where you're just so down on everything, but just purposely pessimistic to try to ask the right questions so that we achieve what we want to achieve. And here I've written a little script about how to estimate your project. It's hard. Estimating projects is hard, and I wish I had an answer of how to do it correctly, but everyone here knows that it's something that everyone struggles with. How do I estimate my projects? How do I make sure that I'm getting the value that I need for my company and also giving the value that my clients want? There's a couple of pitfalls. Like one of them is right here, the been there, done that. Like I know that I personally have experienced that where you'll get requirements from a client and you'll say, oh, I've done that integration, I know that API. And you go into it and there's just these few things that are just slightly different that add hours and hours and weeks and days onto your schedule and your time. And it can get very frustrating. Another part of why estimating projects is so difficult is because the requirements are usually undefined by the time we get to there. I know that this kind of seems like a chicken and the egg sort of thing where before you write an estimate, you want to know as much as possible, but sometimes clients hold their data or their information close to chest. So like how do you bridge that gap so that you can write an accurate estimation without having all of those details? And I would say that integrating some of this project discovery into your proposal writing is, you can ask these questions tactically to try to navigate that correctly. Another reason why estimating projects is so hard is because a lot of us, I would assume almost all of us, we're bound to a schedule. Like our clients want to know what date, when is this going to launch? They don't, milestones, iterations. This is how a lot of us operate. It's how a lot of our clients operate. It's just by dates, and time is hard to manage. I know that you guys have dealt with like time and programming is even difficult to wrangle at times. So it's hard to deal with this. Yes?
Can I say something?
Sure.
I'm a site builder, and for a number of years, I've been an IT consultant for small business. Prior to that, I worked in software development at Fortune 500 companies. One of the practices that is work that I've experienced is when you have a project, that at the beginning you don't estimate the whole project. You estimate the first piece, which is maybe project discovery or system requirements or whatever, and you sell a firm commitment to doing the first piece for a certain amount of time and dollars. And after you go through the requirements, you know what they really want and what they're allowed, then you can estimate more pieces. What I've seen in web development is that it seems to be a tendency and practice quite often for web developers to have an initial meeting with a client and give an estimate for the whole project. And then they start it and they discover, oh, that's not really what they wanted. So there has been a lot of talk in independent web developers about the process of selling a project definition or a project discovery separately and get paid for that, and out of that you then have the rest of you can estimate the rest of the project. So with your methodology, where does it fit in? You sell, is your company, do you sell that first piece, or how do you go about that?
So we integrate that, as an aside, we integrate that into our whole process. So we start the project discovery when we're writing the proposal, and then I'll keep that in mind because we're going to get to answering that really soon. No problem. Yeah, so since we're abiding by this schedule, like, is there a better way? Is there a better way than just the schedule, like was just mentioned? Like, what can we deliver? And there are alternative management methodologies that we can define success by, not just by what time, when is this launching? Is it launching on time? But note that this is hard to convince your clients of. Like, not all clients want to abide by this. It's something that if you want to advocate for and you really strongly believe in these methodologies, I support you 100%. We just have to be aware that not all clients will support it. So the first one is success by product. So how much the product, our final product, is available and working for our clients. Like, that is a definition of success, as opposed to launching on a date. Another one could be issues. Maybe you have an issue tracker. How many issues did we solve? How many are left over? Can we define success that way? Or maybe it's by risks. risks that we identified at the beginning of the project, did we overcome them? And if we did, then great, we had a successful project. Or maybe just business objectives, like did we solve these business objectives? Did our project, did our software improve the performance of our business? And finally, quality, like did we produce a quality product? Like these can be ways of managing your methodology of what success is defined as, but it also can be integrated into the standard way, which is management by calendar and by schedule. Like all of these things, making sure that our product is available and working, that we tackled all of the issues, that we addressed the risks, that we helped us and our clients improve their business objectives, and finally that we achieved a quality project. But we all know that that's like really, that's like in a perfect world. Most of the time, they just want an estimate. And I'm going to be 100% transparent. Like this session, I cannot give you the answers to how to make your estimate. Like a lot of that is your own, business and your own details. Like us at Chromatic, we usually bill by time and materials. Some people do fixed bid projects. It all depends on like how your business is set up. But what I hope that you get out of this session is that you can answer those questions better yourself. That you can take this project discovery document from here and to answer your own questions so that you can figure out how to best make those estimates. And hopefully do a MidCamp or DrupalCon session of it, because I love hearing about how people tackle these issues that we all deal with in software, but has also been around for ages and ages. There's so many books about estimating projects in the best way. It's really tough to do. So project discovery helps to mitigate unstable requirements. And that's the second reason of why projects run away. First reason, poor estimation. Second reason, unstable requirements. And we're going to try to take care of the unstable requirements. If we can take care of that, then we already have 50% of why things go awry. Requirement errors, way more costly to fix in production than during development. This seems like such a basic thing that we all have experienced and know. Deploying hot fixes are not something that a lot of people like to do. Staying late on a Friday or having to fix something on a weekend. These are things that also are very costly. If we can handle and address a lot of these requirements and find out the issues that are causing these errors early in development, we can make keep our velocity up and also keep our costs down for our clients. So we're not having all hands on deck today for to fix a fire that we didn't just because we didn't have the requirements that we needed at the time. And this is also like a little bit of a paradox where missing requirements are the most expensive error to fix. I know that I've experienced it as a freelancer in the past where you meet with a client, you get your requirements, you launch your product, and something is missing, and it's something that they never maybe explicitly talked about, they never alluded to. It's something that they just assumed that you understood that that's what they wanted. And that is a huge issue. I know I've experienced it, and I've had to eat a lot of costs in my own experience because I want my clients to be happy, but I also want to, how do we not have these missing requirements? Because ultimately, missing requirements, they're omitted logic. It's something that you can't test. You can't test something that isn't there, like a missing conditional, or we're setting a value that's supposed to be set back to its original state after it's been used. Like these are things that we need to just be very keen and aware of. And I feel like this bleeds into that pessimism. Like when you analyze a code base, just being very pessimistic about things, just so that you know like what we're getting into, so we don't miss out on these requirements and we don't omit any of this logic. Also, there's just no silver bullet. Like this is something that will help you achieve what you want. It's helped us at Chromatic really streamline our process in project discovery, but it's not a silver bullet. I just want everyone to remember that. I wish it was. I wish that my talk was titled like the silver bullet to project discovery with Chromatic, but it's not, because software development is just so complex. It's also an iterative process. Oftentimes the first solution that we come to in our discovery, it's not the best solution. It's sometimes we find something different. So there's no easy way to answer this, but I hope that this will help to mitigate a lot of those issues that we all seem to share. So let's get into the project discovery. This is going to be the meat, the talk. We're going to go through the 4 different steps, and we're just going to work through them. Also note, just a reminder that this slide deck is on the MidCamp session, so you can go online and download that. We're planning on releasing this to the community as like a full document, but we're still just not 100% there today. But you can go, and if you need it right now, maybe you have a meeting this week, you can go and download it and organize it yourself. It should be pretty straightforward there. So project discovery. I just also want to remind everyone that we're building these relationships like I talked about earlier, and that people are really important when we're building these relationships. Nothing really beats a face-to-face meeting with your clients, dealing with emails or Slack or Google Hangouts or BlueJeans or Zoom, whatever integrations you guys may have. It's really the best way to do project discovery we've found is always in person. So on-site meetings, they matter a lot. A little background, Chromatic is a distributed company. There's a good cluster of us in Chicago, but there's people all around the world. There's 12 of us total. And we work with clients and brands all over the country. And since we're distributed, we all usually work from co-working spaces or from home. And whenever we start a new project, we make sure that we do an on-site with that team to get this face time with them, to be able to really just connect with them as people. As opposed to making it all business. Like we could conduct our business by doing it through emails or virtual meetings, but we find that meeting with someone face to face and listening to their discussions in the room and hearing their concerns, it's just a better way of operating. So we've made it a really important thing to meet face to face with our clients. Now that might not be practical for some of you. Maybe your clients are very far away. But if so, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of having an on-site meeting. So we're going to go through the project discovery document that we have in this slide deck. And there's 4 major sections. First is goals, then it's process, then it's data, and finally design and development. So we're starting with the top down. We're painting with a broad brush because it's very important to just lay the groundwork that we can operate on, starting with goals, and then to process, before we jump into the things that me as a developer I'm really interested in, which is like the data. I want to see the data. I want to see what we have, and also the design and the development. Those are things that I, as a developer, am really excited about, but we have to cool my jets a bit so that we talk about the goals in our process first, so that we can keep our velocity up when we're starting the development with the design and the data. So first, let's talk about goals. And also, I know that on this session proposal, it talks about does this only apply for when you're starting a new project? And I would say no. These questions can be asked in your stand-up meetings, in your retrospectives, in your iterations. These are questions that can be asked throughout the process if you're already started. It's great to have this document. So this document is also, just a side note, is really helpful when you're being onboarded. So I joined Chromatic a year ago around, and I started working on this project the very first day, and part of it was because they had a document that had all of these answers that I could read through in maybe the first hour that I started working, as opposed to having someone in a meeting tell me about the nuances and intricacies. They'll come back. Nuances and intricacies of this project that I was working on. Being able to reference a document is so helpful. Also, it's super helpful because you can just Control F or Apple F to just search for whatever you're looking for, instead of having to bug a developer or a client about answers to things that might have already been discussed. So having this document for each project is so helpful. And we've done projects where we're working through a document and we didn't have it at the beginning, so we've answered these questions, wrote up the documentation internally so that we all can reference those in the future. So with goals, we're starting at the very top. Now remember, we're talking top down. This is from 30,000 feet. 4 major questions. why will the project exist? It seems like a very simple question and something that should be simple to answer. What are we doing? But it's a question that it's important to ask. Like, what's the goal of this project? Why are we doing it? What is the reason that it exists? Following that, business goals of the project. What are they? How will success be measured, and what problem does this solve for the client? Now, having your clients answer these questions can be surprisingly difficult. Like, maybe they don't know all of the answers when they come to you. Even in their requests for proposals and stuff, they can't, like, that maybe won't even be able to answer these things. So it's great if you can get someone on the line to help you work through that as you're writing proposals or defining scope before you get this client. But it's just important to keep this in mind, that these are 4 questions that kind of set the tone for your project that you can use as like a great reference to answer some other questions later on. Next thing is deadlines. What are the deadlines of the project? How were they chosen? Is a great question. Like, are the deadlines arbitrary? That is something that, as a developer, sometimes it feels like, why this Tuesday? Is there some reason why this needs to go out? And for clients, maybe they understand they have these deadlines, and it's something that their organizations understand that maybe you being, joining them, you don't understand. So it's important just to clarify, who chose these deadlines and why were they chosen? How progress is shared with others and who those people are. That is so important, just to have this sort of communication between your clients, between your team members, even how is that progress going to be shared? A lot of the times, the things that we do, it can seem like we're working on the backend, we're developing modules, we're writing integrations. These are things that maybe a business stakeholder that isn't technical. They might look at the site, they might see like it looks exactly the same, it seems to function exactly the same. What is happening in these weeks? So having this making sure that progress is being shared appropriately, and even advocating if you need to. Maybe you're brought on as like a dev augmentation team with a larger brand or something, and you need to advocate for yourself to say, hey, this is the progress that we're making. I want you all to know that. We might report that in our iteration or our stand-ups, but like making sure that whoever writes the checks and whoever is at the top really knows what's happening. That's really important. It's also frustrating sometimes that that's not always reported correctly. So we just have to advocate for ourselves to make sure that that happens. And finally, milestones along the way. Like, what checkpoints do we have? Depending on your project, maybe the milestone is just launch. Other times there might be iterations or so on. We need to just clarify what deadlines that we have. And finally, for goals is personnel. So who's on the team? Who are the stakeholders? What is each team member responsible for is a great question, just to clear the air of like, what are these people doing, not just for you to the client, but also for the client to you. Like having this two-way communication so that they know who's responsible for what. We're recently on a project with the Meredith Corporation where we split our own dev augmentation team, where one of us was responsible for writing all the migrations, another one was responsible for doing all of the front end, and 2 of us were assisting with both on each side. And having those clear roles within our own team help their team to understand who do we go to answer these questions, or if we have problems, who do we go to? Instead of just sending a blast email to everyone on the project, they know they have to ask Gus or Adam or myself or whoever was working on it. They know who to go to, and it saved a lot of time. Contact information for the team, cell phones, Slack, email. Just having a document that has everyone's contact information is so helpful, just to be able to reference it. The tools that we're using to communicate, and also what tools we need access to. Access to these tools, so like integrating with another company's Slack integration or so on. How do we set up our local environments? In-house knowledge that a contracted team might not know, some proprietary information, making sure that is talked about early on in the project, so they understand like this is something that you have deep knowledge and know a lot about how this works. We don't, and that's okay to ask that question that we don't have. We can't answer or solve that problem without having that access or that knowledge. So if you could share that with us, it would be so helpful. And then finally, just two ones: decision makers. Who's going to make the final say on something? That it can be a loaded question sometimes when you're working with teams. Like some people, like there's politics that we have to deal with sometimes of who has the final say. But having this question there can kind of shield us from that. So we're just we're doing our due diligence. We're trying to build trust with our clients, and we want to know like if it comes down to it, who has the final say. We can also provide that for our own teams. Like we know that this is our technical lead. Who's your technical lead? Who's your business stakeholder? Who will say and make those tough decisions? And who finally is our main contact? Pretty straightforward thing. After goals, we're going to move to process. Now this is going to kind of expand into that before we get into the nitty-gritty details of development and design. So process with management. What project management methodology will be used? Like Joe mentioned, like a lot of software, we do waterfall, we do lean, we do agile. Like what can we define that? And also maybe this client, maybe they haven't defined that. Maybe they don't know, which is surprisingly common, that they don't know what kind of project management methodology they want to use. So you can advocate for whichever one you find that you enjoy the best. Is there a perfect one? I would say no, but there's a lot of great options. But just having that there on the table is helpful. If they have one in place, great. We'll just join along. We'll join in if we know like the dates, the calendars, the meetings, the iterations, all so on and so forth. Let's get that all squared away at the beginning. Requirements and other information. How are we documenting these things so that things just don't disappear in someone's email, where they'll ask you what happened. Like I thought I told someone on your team about this thing that we wanted. Where did it go? Having a common place where you can document things is so helpful and so important. And there's a lot of solutions that you can use for that. Ticketing system. What ticketing system? We're going to use Jira or Asana or GitHub. Who knows? Like whatever you're doing. What workflow do we have? Things that can be assumed a lot of the times when you just join or start with a client. You can assume a lot of those things, but just asking will help to mitigate some of those things. Meetings, who will be in them, and then finally controlling the scope of the project. Who's controlling it? Who's in charge of that? Do we have to, as developers, be super vigilant to control that scope, or is there someone that we can we can interface with their team, our client, to help to control scope so that we can deliver a quality project on time and on budget, as opposed to having a runaway project? And that's a really tough thing to do, because like I said, like requirements at the beginning will change. Like they're always changed. That's probably the most consistent thing about requirements, is that they're always changing. So controlling scope is so hard, but it's important to just realize that that's something that we need to advocate for, and hopefully win someone on our client's team to advocate for as well, so that we can deliver. And then technologies for meetings. So we're a distributed company, so we use Google Hangouts and we use Zoom to do a lot of our stand-up meetings with our clients. If you're meeting in person, then that's awesome too. So just clarifying, what are we using? Testing performance and security. What forms of functional testing will be done? This might be a question that some of the clients aren't even aware of. Like maybe they don't have a QA team or automated tests. Maybe it's something that you as a developer can provide and write those tests, and also let them know like that's gonna, it's gonna help the process, but it's also gonna cost money to write great tests. Functional testing. What are we gonna use to do functional testing? How is performance going to be measured on the front and back end? User testing, security policy. Security is becoming a huge thing. Having a policy in place. Some companies might have one in place that we need to abide by. Some might not have any security policy, which is always a bit frightening to take on a client even that isn't as vigilant about security as you should be. legal requirements behind that securities policy. So these are just things that you can ask your clients. Some clients might be better prepared to answer these questions, others might not, and it's okay if they can't. And it's important to remind them as you're going through project discovery that if they don't have a security policy in place, I'm a developer, I'm not a lawyer, I don't have all of the answers. You can consult with me and my company to help you, but just being aware that that's important to have as well. And finally, testing on browsers, like what devices are we going to target? Are we going to support IE 8 or 7 or Windows phones or BlackBerry? Like what are the important things that we're going to do? Like some clients might just say, we want to do it all, and you have to remind them, like, we can do it all, that's no problem. You just have to remember how much it costs. And you can bring up that little estimation diagram that I put up. Like, it's going to cost you quite a bit to handle that. And then finally, are there any laws that your client might have? Maybe they're a government agency, they have to be 508c compliant, or they have to follow accessibility. Maybe they don't, but just having them be aware that that is also very important in the web, that it's accessible for everyone. Yes?
How much do you push back on that if your client is interested or if it's not a requirement on their end? Like, how much do you feel like you need to educate your client?
I feel like it's important to just educate them as much as possible. That this is important for everyone to be able to access your product. And I know that a lot of clients might push back because they don't want to deal with the budget or the requirements of it. So I'll just push back to the degree where it's like, this is really important and you need to realize how important it is until you feel like they either get the message or they don't really care. It can be tenuous sometimes. Next in process, we have infrastructure and deployment. We're starting to get into some of the things as developers we get really interested about. So the domains that the project will live on, how they'll be managed, what servers, how those servers will be managed. A really simple thing, what technology will power the project. It's surprising how clients might not even have that answer for you when you go to them. And it can also be like a bit of a red flag if you haven't taken on the client and being like, whoa, like maybe this isn't for us. How the servers are managed, who has access to them, what environments they'll be, local environments matching. Are you using Vagrant or using Docker? What tools are you using? These are things that could take a lot of time for both your team and your client's team to answer. At the very least, what version of PHP and MySQL they're using if they're on Drupal, which you can mimic in your own development environments, but it also can be really frustrating when different things, like they're getting a lot of errors because you're writing things that aren't a part of like PHP 5.3 or whatever they might be using. Development strategy tools like Jenkins and Travis, caching technologies on the server level, and then finally, for caching, like mobile detection, will there be issues with like edge size includes and so on and so forth? Like, will that complicate the caching? Like, these are questions also that I find like a lot of clients don't have the answers to. Even technical leads, like they'll have to take some time to think about. But it's great to just have them out there so that they can think about them as you're thinking about them as you move along in the process. So this document, this doesn't have to be answered. Like, you don't have to answer every single question before things start necessarily, but at least expose everyone on the team to these questions so that people are already thinking about these things. Before we're like, this is the night before launch, let's get out there, and then launch happens, and it's like, well, caching on mobile is just so messed up. What's happening? I don't know, we're going to spend a lot of time and money fixing things. Like, if we can have these things in people's thought processes as we're developing, more power to us. So next is data. And this is where the Drupal-specific stuff really comes in. We're going to talk about the Drupal content model. So content types, taxonomy, custom entity types, relationships, fields, bundles, languages, so on. These are all things that are Drupal-specific. Now, as a developer, it's really easy to talk about that to technical leads, but maybe you're interfacing with a business owner that doesn't have that. So I would challenge all of us, and myself included, to try to translate what a content type or field is into like normal terms so that people can understand, like, this is how content is organized, this is how it's managed, as opposed to talking about like views and panels and all of the above. Source and migrations, like, is there data that exists? Where is it coming from? What format is it in? Is there a strategy for it? Are we doing it continuously? What are the deadlines? Like, are we going to migrate continuously up until launch? Like all of those questions should be answered before that becomes an issue. And I know that migrations are, they can be fun, they can be a hassle, they can take a lot of time. So having this clarified from the beginning will be so helpful so that we make sure that things are taken care of from the get-go. Users and editorial workflow. So who's this audience for the project? What roles? What permissions? What's the editorial workflow look like if you're working for a client that publishes a lot of content? User profiles, are they visible or not? So on and so forth. And a lot of user things. I feel like after building or developing in Drupal, you kind of have an idea, but it's also good to just let your clients know like what the Drupal way of handling users and permissions are. And also leads into search engine optimization, which is the final part of data, which I know that it seems like a countless amount of clients will launch their thing on Drupal, and then like all the user data isn't behind like a robots.txt. So like they're like, why are our users like appearing on our search engine results? So we just have to be aware that these are questions that we need to answer. Like, what tools are we using? Are we using analytics? Consistency between our legacy sites, aliases. Sometimes it's super important to keep the same aliases and the same data going so that they have persistent tracking of their analytics. Who's responsible for ensuring the content's optimized? How will they test it? All very important things when we talk about search engines optimization. And finally, design and development. So there's a ton of questions here. First, design and user experience. Where do the designs come from? And we're going to go through these in brief so that we can get to questions at the end. How will graphics, fonts, icons be prepared? What's the responsive strategy? Major breakpoints? The different personas that are expected to use the project? And the most exciting one, what will be on the homepage? I feel like consistent along all clients, like they are just so excited about their home pages. Like they want them to look great. Maybe they're not trafficked the most. It's probably the thing that you might get the most information from your clients about is this homepage. Maybe they just have a homepage design. I know that I've experienced that so much. Assets, embedded media, where is it going to live? Do we have a CDN? Do we want images to be an entity? What kind of image styles do we need to define so that our site's properly optimized? Third-party ads and third-party services and ads. Are we doing ads? What tools will we use? Third-party services needing a shell of the project that we're building. Like, do we need to make some of our own custom integrations? A lot of sometimes this might not apply to your clients, but it's just good to have it out there. And then finally, backend. What version of Drupal? Drupal 7, 6, 8, hopefully 7 or 8. Will there be any significant technologies used alongside Drupal? Is this going to be some sort of advanced integration? What kind of contrib modules are we relying on? How are the modules organized? Is this a multi-site? Are we enforcing coding standards? Do we have a naming standard for our modules? How much documentation, caching, and also patches? So these are just great questions to have from the get-go to make those things clear so that your code reviews go great, your backend is very consistent and clean. A few more non-standard functionality. Are we writing custom things? Are we choosing like a contrib only and writing patches for those contrib modules and then submitting it back to the community, which is can be costly and difficult sometimes to get those things integrated, or are we just writing custom modules? How are components being placed, panels, contexts, display suite, and then also what view modes do we need? Finally, front end. Are we doing a decoupled approach? Front end tools like Grunt, Bower, Sass, compiling, how is that happening? Are we using Drupal standard aggregation or not? Fonts, icons, this front end continues on with a lot of questions about preprocessed functions, JavaScript frameworks, which are so popular right now, responsive strategy, critical CSS, what administration theme will be used. Some of these things maybe your clients don't have the answers to, and you can lend your own. You can advocate for what you want for the administration theme, for implementing critical CSS, and so on. Finally, documentation. Where does it live? Who's in charge of maintaining it? How is it also verified? Like if everyone has access to documentation, like is anyone reviewing that, or just maybe a rogue developer or junior developers writing things that aren't necessarily 100% true? So we have to make sure that we keep control over what's happening, and we all have eyes on it. And finally, version control. What are we using? Where's the repository? How are we doing a branching strategy? Are we doing merges? Are we doing rebases? Pull requests? Who's in charge? How are they going to be managed? These are great questions to ask. So that is it. After you're going through it, hopefully you'll be like this cat. Your project will be discovered. And just a reminder, all of these questions are online so that you don't have to write them all down. You can reference them there. Just a quick thing before we go into Q&A. MidCamp Sprint is on Sunday, March 20 at 10, so a reminder about that. And then finally we have time for some questions and answers. Yes?
For some of the more technical questions for development design, like what content types or what JavaScript libraries are going to use, are those more questions that you ask yourselves internally when you're starting to do the discovery project, or are you actually asking those to the client? Because I assume clients who hire you are going to be like, you tell us, that's why we're paying you. So I wonder how you balance or how you proposition those questions in a way that it still sounds like you know what you're doing. Not saying that you don't know, but you know.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question, just for the recording, and correct me if I was incorrect, how do we balance sounding like experts and advocating for things for like JavaScript frameworks and answering those questions for our client. I would say that those questions can be used, like you said, internally is something that we do a lot, where we have our own internal discussions about the right tool. Sometimes when you just present that question, clients might come to you and be like, we've heard about React, we don't know what it is, but we want it. And you have to, inform them about what the costs are, what the benefits are. And so I would say that for the questions, I'll go back real quick, about, the design and development process. This is more for like the technical interface of whatever client or company you're working with. Like they would be better suited to answer those questions with you or alongside you. And if they don't have a technical lead and they're just leaning 100% on you, then these are things that you can ask internally, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and something that you could write up and then share back with your clients so that they have documentation about your process and your implementation and the tools that you're using. Any other questions?
Just to get a sense of where some of the advice is coming from, what's the typical budget size of a project that you work on?
So it varies quite a bit. So I don't know how much the partners of my company want to answer that, have that recorded. So if we could talk afterwards, which is fine. But like some of the clients that we work with at Chromatic are like the Meredith Corporation, which does a lot of publishing, like Parents.com or Shape.com. We've worked with a whole host of other fairly large teams. So context for this document is that with working with some of those really great teams, they had their own documents that we saw that these are really helpful as they onboard people. Can we do that within our own company and with our other clients, so that things get up to speed and are referenced very easily. Yes.
In your process, do you charge for the discovery phase?
Usually we do. So before, when there are our clients, we charge for that, and that includes the on-site. That includes the meeting, being face to face. This is time that we find is so important to the process of development. They're not just paying, because you have to remember, they're not just paying us for software. They're paying us for our expertise and our time and our consulting. So we can provide a lot of value with that, and sometimes it might be hard to convince your clients that this, like maybe they think this is only part of the request RFP stage or something. But if you have this document, like this is a document that is not for us, it's for you as well. And this is something that when we're long and gone and you're maintaining the project or whatever, like you can go back and reference these answers to the questions of why these things were done, as opposed to having their own team of developers sitting around and scratching their heads like, why did we integrate this service or so on.
So in your scheme of things, somebody your firm makes a proposal to a client for a project, and the first piece you're going to charge for. At that point, you don't give an estimate for the rest of the project, you just give an estimate for the project discovery.
Yes. Well, I guess it depends. There's a lot of nuance that happens as well. So sometimes it's like that. Sometimes it's for like other iterations, or we have a fixed bid, or it just really depends on the clients and their needs and their budgets.
You're going to have to convince me to charge for that. I'm convinced.
Yeah.
How have you had success keeping clients engaged? Say if they decide that they're going to play Scrum Master and prioritize their own features. There's of course like a balance between educating them as to what they're trading when they're dragging things around in that priority list. But I find often that it's difficult to even get the clients engaged on that level where sort of day to day they're going to be interfacing with you, as opposed to just like a weekly meeting to show progress, which might not be frequent enough.
Yeah. So it's that's a great question. It's difficult to keep those clients engaged. I'm sure that you've experienced it, and I've experienced it a lot with clients where you're trying to keep things up to date, and they're just addressing things from like a top-down level, not seeing like the nitty-gritty. So I would say that being so remember that like we're dealing with people, and just advocating for yourself is so important on that end, and just interfacing with them. And I know it's like a lot easier said than done, because like you could send emails, you could send messages, and they might never respond until it's time to talk about the iteration. But at least like making that sort of concerted effort so that you can have this sort of trail of documentation and references is helpful. But I would say that it's tough. It's really tough to get that sort of buy-in when they might have a lot of pressure from the higher ups or something to deal with those sort of issues. Yes.
I have a question kind of similar to one that was already asked, but a number of the questions in process and in design and development seem like they made a lot of sense in like a team augmentation context. But then if you're doing a like build from the ground up for a client, seemed like it would be like maybe not as efficient or even kind of awkward to ask.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like are we going to use coding standards? Like that's something that we would just say yes, we are going to enforce coding standards. And then on the process side of things, like asking what ticketing system, I would think that could lead to inefficiencies. Asking them what ticketing system we should use when we already have like a process that's familiar to all of our devs.
Yeah.
Just curious, do you, if there's a project from the ground up, do you ask those questions, or is it more like this is what we're doing, this is what we recommend?
Yeah. So this might be helpful for your own teams to like answer these questions of like what the ideal would be, so that when you do have like a ground up build, you have those answers. Like we use these systems. Like this is how we do it. Here are the answers. Like just like this document can be augmented in however you can take out questions, you can answer them yourselves, and something that should be fluid. So yeah, it'd be fantastic to if you're doing a ground up build, which is always really exciting. I always get super excited about that. Like choosing the right tools and writing them and letting your clients know that these are what we chose, and maybe even like having like documentation or why we made these choices, so that they can understand like this is a process, it wasn't just arbitrary.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm curious if you think there's anything particularly unique about project development for Drupal versus on someone that's not using a content management system or a different content management system?
I would say that the most unique thing about it would be, number one, migrations. So like the way that Drupal migrations are handled can be vastly different than other systems that aren't using that if they just have a straight database or whatever. And also just the content relationships of data. There's a very Drupal specific way, as we know, of how we manage our content and our data. I'll say that those are the two key things when we talk about the difference between like Drupal and then another sort of framework that we're using. All the rest.
Specifically for project development or project discovery, I think that's more I'm kind of interested in. Does that affect your timeline for when you're trying to find out information or how you interact with clients?
Yeah, I would say so. So having this sort of information about like data will help, at least myself, understand better the requirements that we're hoping to achieve with our clients. Does that answer your question?
I would add that at this particular point in history, it's particularly relevant because the contrib space in D8 is so nascent that it would change my recommendation entirely if a project that I was bidding on or had already started contracting work in discovery with was going to depend heavily on a contrib module that was non-existent for D8. And if they wanted to stick with Drupal in the future, I would say go with D7, we'll port the thing to D8. But if there was no major contrib dependency, then D8 would be the recommendation. So I'd say at this point in historical time, that would be really important to consider.
It's an excellent point. Thank you. We have a couple more minutes. Any final questions? Yes.
I'm not sure if I missed this. I went a little late. Do you have a timeline or time box for discovery that you set up?
So hopefully I'm answering this correctly. The discovery usually happens, right at the beginning. For time box, can I clarify what?
Like, do you say 2 weeks, or do you leave it open until all the questions are answered?
So personally, for our company, we do the discovery on our on-site meetings. So we'll usually take at least 1 or 2 days, maybe even a week, to meet on site and try to go through as many questions as possible. And we're just going to start, I said, from the top down, because a lot of those other questions, in design or development, those could be answered as things have already started, and usually do get answered in that sense. But I guess it just depends on, maybe you don't have all of that time. You maybe only have, a 4-hour or a couple-hour meeting with the client to do your discovery. Picking and choosing the most important questions out of the document that you feel help your business and your understanding of a project is a really great strategy to use as well. And also, even having this as an open documentation document, attached to your project, so that as answers come in, you can continue to fill those out. Great. Any other questions? Great. Well, just feedback on joined in. Follow me on Twitter or follow Chromatic. We'll be posting a more formal document here in the coming months. Also, just a shout out. So this document and this whole process isn't myself; it's the whole team. But also, just for recording, Gus Childs was the brainchild where he wrote a lot of this from the beginning, from his own experiences at Chromatic, and we kind of adopted it and have used it in our own process. So thank you everyone for coming. Hope to see you guys around.